She gave me a pair of cheap socks and told me it was a gift from my son. $100,000 vanished, replaced by cotton blends from the discount store. She thought the old carpenter was broken, worn out, just a dusty relic in a crumbling house. She was about to find out, I don't just build things, I demolish them too. If you're listening to this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. It helps to know I'm not alone in this crazy world. My name is Arthur, and this is the story of how my own family tried to erase me. Drip, 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 the kitchen faucet wouldn't stop. It echoed in the quiet house, the only sound keeping time. Today was my birthday, 70 years old. I stared up at the ceiling in the living room. Cracks spider-webbed across the plaster. They looked like a road map of my life. Long roads, lots of detours. This house was mine. I built it 40 years ago. My sweat, my hands, my pride. Now it was showing its age. Just like me. I eased myself into my old armchair. The worn fabric felt familiar, but the ache in my knees was sharp, like knives twisting in the joints. A lifetime of carpentry does that to you. Lifting lumber, swinging a hammer, it gave me this house, a solid foundation. But it took my body in return. The roof leaked when it rained hard. The furnace coughed and rattled like an old man dying. The porch sagged. I didn't have the strength to fix it. I didn't have the money. I felt useless and utterly alone. The house felt too big now, empty. My wife Margaret passed 3 years ago. The silence since then was heavy, pressing down on me. Margaret was the heart of this place. She would have made today special. Carrot cake, my favorite. Laughter filling the rooms. Now there was just the dripping faucet and the silence. I missed her so much, it hurt to breathe sometimes. And in the fog of grief, right after she died, when the world felt blurry, I made a mistake. A huge one. I remember my last visit to Dr. Evans. A kind woman, but serious. She looked at the x-rays of my knees. Arthur, the cartilage is almost gone. She said, pointing to the narrow space between the bones. You need physical therapy, maybe even a replacement. I can't afford that, Doc, I told her, shame burning in my throat. She sighed. Ignoring it won't make it go away. Arthur, the pain will only get worse. She was right. But knowing that didn't pay the bills. My son, Michael, was a millionaire. He made his fortune in the city. Computers, apps, things I didn't understand. A world away from sawdust and nails. I was proud of him, so proud. He lived a different life, a glass tower. His elegant wife, Brenda, she was beautiful, polished, always smiling that perfect white smile, but her eyes, cold, like stones. I never trusted them, but I never said anything. Michael loved her. That was supposed to be enough. When Margaret died, I shattered. I couldn't function. The paperwork, the bills, organizing a life that just ended. It was crushing me. Brenda stepped in to help. I remember her sitting at my kitchen table. Her perfume smelled expensive. Alien. It didn't belong here, mixing with the memory of Margaret's lavender. Arthur, you shouldn't worry about this, she had said. Her voice was smooth, like expensive silk. Her hand, perfectly manicured, rested lightly on my arm. I flinched. Her touch felt cold. Michael is so busy with the company, Brenda continued, her smile never wavering. Let me handle the finances. We want you to relax, to grieve without stress. It sounded like kindness, a lifeline in the storm. I was drowning, and she offered a hand. She consolidated my accounts. Simplifying everything, she said. She brought a stack of papers. Thick, heavy papers. Just sign here, Arthur, and here, and initial here. I signed them, all of them, without reading a single word. Why would I read them? Michael was my son. She was his wife. I trusted her. I trusted my family. That was the moment I gave away my life, and the betrayal was just beginning. Since then, Brenda managed everything. She visited every few weeks. Sometimes she brought groceries, sometimes a new sweater, and she always gave me an allowance. Cash, just for your incidentals, Arthur, she'd say. She would hold out a crisp $50 bill, never handing it to me directly, always placing it on the table, like a tip for the help. $50 for weeks. I felt like a child getting pocket money. Shame burned in my stomach every time, but I took it. I needed it. Last winter, the roof started leaking badly. Water stained the ceiling of the bedroom Margaret and I shared. It felt like a violation. I mentioned it to Brenda. She didn't look up from her phone, just kept scrolling. The silence stretched uncomfortable. I cleared my throat. We're looking into the best options. Arthur, she said, her tone dismissive. These things take time. Quality contractors are hard to find. I'm a contractor. I knew she was lying. But I stayed silent. My throat felt tight. I nodded, defeated. The leak was still there. Drip, drip. Then there was the pain. My knees. The constant ache that kept me awake. I told Brenda about Dr. Evans' recommendation. Surgery. She sighed. A delicate sound of impatience. She checked her watch. A diamond-encrusted thing that probably cost more than my truck. We're saving up for the best specialist, Arthur, she said, looking me straight in the eye. But Michael's investments are tied up right now. The market is volatile. Volatile, tied up, words meant to confuse me, words meant to shut me down. I believed her. I didn't want to be a burden. That's what Brenda always reminded me. You should be grateful, Arthur. Michael does so much for you. Grateful for the cold. Grateful for the pain. Grateful for the silence. I was 70 years old, living on the charity of my son and his wife. Or so I thought. The truth was far uglier. I looked at the small store-bought cake on the counter. Happy 70th birthday, Arthur, written in cheap blue icing. I was about to eat a slice alone, in the dark. Then I heard a car pull into the driveway. My heart lifted. A genuine smile touched my lips for the first time all day. Michael, I remembered. I pushed myself out of the chair. My knees protested, but I ignored them. I walked to the door, opening it just as Michael was getting out of his silver sedan. He looked tired, lines around his eyes that hadn't been there last time. But his face lit up when he saw me. Dad.
Happy birthday, he said, jogging up the steps. He pulled me into a strong hug. I hugged him back. Tight. The scent of his expensive cologne momentarily masked the musty smell of the old house. Michael, I'm glad you made it, son, I said, clapping him on the back. I was starting to think you'd forgotten your old man. Never, Dad, Michael said, pulling away. Traffic was a nightmare. He glanced around the porch, his smile fading slightly at the sight of the rotting wood. Brenda sends her love, he added quickly. She's running a bit behind. Some charity luncheon. She should be here soon. Of course, I said. I tried to keep the disappointment out of my voice. Brenda was always busy with her charity events, her luncheons, her polished life, a life I apparently didn't fit into. We walked inside. The air in the living room was cold. The ancient furnace was struggling. Michael stopped. His eyes scanned the room. The water stains on the ceiling, the peeling wallpaper, the worn-out furniture. A deep frown crossed his face. Dad, he started, the place looks worse than last time. And why is it so cold in here?
Shame washed over me.
I had always taken pride in maintaining my home. Now I was failing. Well, yes, I admitted, shifting my weight. The roof is still bad, and the furnace is on its last legs. I felt small, weak, exactly how Brenda wanted me to feel. Michael sat down on the sofa, looking genuinely puzzled. Dad, this is what I don't understand. He leaned forward. You should have more than enough to fix these things. To hire a crew, to get that knee surgery, to live comfortably. I stared at him, confused. Michael, my pension only stretches so far. And Brenda said your investments were tied up. I swallowed hard. I know you help when you can. I appreciate the allowance. The word allowance tasted like ash in my mouth. Michael's confusion deepened. Tied up, Dad. The company is doing better than ever. He shook his head. I'm not talking about your pension. I'm talking about the money I sent. He paused, then his face brightened. It was the same look he used to have when he brought home a perfect report card, eager to please. That reminds me, he said, swig voice, full of pride. I wanted to make sure everything went smoothly. Something cold started to crawl up my spine. I know you're too proud to ask for help, Michael continued, oblivious. Which is why I wanted to do something substantial for your seven. Something that would take the stress off you. He paused, waiting for my reaction. I just stared at him, bewildered. Dad, he prompted, his smile widening. How do you like the $100,000 I gave you through Brenda? The world stopped. The sound of the dripping faucet suddenly seemed incredibly loud. Drip, 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 drip. I gripped the back of my armchair. My knuckles turned white. $100,000. That was more money than I had ever seen at one time in my entire life. Enough to fix everything. Enough to live without the constant gnawing worry. Enough to get my life back. What? My voice was a rasp. A dry whisper in the cold room. What $100,000? Michael's smile wavered. The excitement in his eyes flickered and died, replaced by confusion. The money for the house repairs, Dad, and for your medical care. He looked around the room again, the reality of the situation slowly dawning on him. I transferred it about 3 months ago, he said, his voice quieter now. I specifically told Brenda to handle the arrangements, because I knew you wouldn't spend it on yourself. He looked back at me, his eyes searching mine. Didn't she set up the contractors? I expected the work to be done by now. 3 months ago, I stared at him, my mind racing. I searched my memory. Brenda had visited. She brought groceries, a $50 bill, and she brought me a gift. She said Michael wanted me to have it, because my feet were always cold. The cold dread in my spine turned to ice. The betrayal wasn't just a possibility anymore. It was a certainty, heavy and suffocating. I looked my son in the eye. My heart was breaking. I couldn't lie to him, not on my birthday, not ever. Son, I said slowly. My voice shook. The words trembled with the weight of the truth. She only gave me a pair of socks from you. I walked over to the hallway closet. My movements felt stiff, robotic. I pulled out a small, gray box. Inside was a pair of thin, cheap cotton socks, the kind you buy in a pack of 10 at the discount store. I handed them to Michael. He stared at the socks, then back at me. His face was pale with disbelief. Socks? He whispered. That's impossible. He fumbled for his phone. I have the transfer confirmation. $100,000 to the account she manages for you. I haven't seen a dime, Michael, I said, the words cutting my throat. When I asked about the roof, she told me to wait. When I asked about the furnace, she said it was too expensive. The silence stretched between us, thick and heavy. I could see the struggle in Michael's eyes, caught between the father he respected and the wife he adored. He didn't want to believe it. He wanted a logical explanation. His misunderstanding. Anything but the ugly truth staring him in the face. Dad, are you sure? He pressed. His tone hardened slightly, a hint of defensiveness creeping in. Protecting her. That's a lot of money to just misplace, he said, his voice tight. Maybe she mentioned it, and you forgot. You have been a little forgetful lately. That stung, deeply. It was the same thing Brenda always said. Gaslighting, making me doubt my own mind. Michael, I said firmly. I stood up straighter, ignoring the protest of my aching knees. I looked him dead in the eye. I may be old, I may be frail, but I am not losing my mind. My voice gained strength. I know the difference between $100,000 and a pair of cheap socks. I received nothing. I held his gaze, refusing to back down, refusing to be dismissed, and at that moment we heard it. Another car pulled into the driveway. This one didn't sound like a sedan. It was a low, throaty rumble, the sound of expensive power, the sound of arrogance. We both turned to the window. Pulling up behind Michael's car was a brand-new, cherry-red luxury sports car, the kind you only see in magazines. It gleamed under the afternoon sun, a stark contrast to the peeling paint and sagging porch of my old house. It was obscene. The driver's door opened. Brenda stepped out. She was radiant, wearing a white designer suit. Sunglasses perched on her head, her blonde hair perfectly styled. She looked like she had just stepped off a runway. She waved. That perfect white smile flashed. I looked at the car, then at Michael. His face was a mask of disbelief and dawning horror. The truth was parked right there in the driveway. The ugly, undeniable truth. $100,000 worth of truth. "It's over," I whispered. The words were heavy with a finality that terrified me. The foundation of my family, the trust I had built my life on, had just crumbled into dust. I felt a sudden, sharp pain in my chest. The front door opened. Brenda breezed in. The scent of expensive perfume filled the room, bringing the chill of the outside world with her. "Happy birthday, Arthur," she chirped, holding up a bottle of champagne. "Sorry I'm late." The luncheon ran over. Then she beamed, gesturing towards the window. "And then I had to pick up this beauty. Isn't she gorgeous?" She finally noticed the atmosphere in the room. The tension was thick enough to choke on. Michael was standing rigid, his face like thunder. I was leaning against the armchair, feeling every one of my 70 years. "What's wrong?" Brenda asked, her smile faltering. She took off her sunglasses. Her cold eyes darted between us. "You look like you've seen a ghost." Michael walked slowly towards her. His eyes were fixed on her face. He held up the box of socks. "Brenda," Michael said. His voice was dangerously low, vibrating with suppressed rage. "Where is the $100,000 I sent for my father?" Brenda laughed, a high, tinkling sound that grated on my nerves. The sound of contempt. "Oh, it's safe, of course. Don't worry about it." "Safe where?" Michael demanded. His voice was rising. "Dad says he never received it. The roof is still leaking. The house is freezing. His knees are getting worse." He pointed at the water stains on the ceiling. "Where's the money, Brenda?" "It's invested," she said smoothly. The lie slid off her tongue, practiced and easy. "I put it into a high-yield account. It's complicated financial stuff." She smiled condescendingly. "I didn't want to bore Arthur with the details. I was planning to surprise you both when it started generating returns. It was a slick lie, believable if you didn't know Brenda, but I was seeing her clearly for the first time. The polished facade was cracking. The ugliness underneath was leaking out. And it was toxic. "Invested," Michael repeated. His gaze drifted to the window. The red sports car gleamed, a monument to her greed. And the car, Brenda, "Is that an investment too?" Brenda stiffened. The mask slipped. "Just for a second. That's different," she snapped. "I needed a new car. The old one was making a funny noise." She regained her composure, smiling brightly. "And this one is a classic. It will appreciate in value."
Dude, an $100,000 car? That depreciates the moment you drive it off the lot.
Michael's voice was loud now, the disbelief turning into raw anger. "Michael, why are you interrogating me?" Brenda's tone turned sharp. She turned on me, her eyes narrowing. "Arthur, what have you been telling him?" She leaned closer. Her voice dropped to a conspiratorial whisper, but loud enough for Michael to hear. The manipulation was breathtaking. "Arthur, you're getting confused again," she said, her voice dripping with fake concern. "Remember we discussed the investments? Last month? You were so happy about it. This was how she did it. Twisting reality, making me doubt my own mind. For years, I had let her convince me I was forgetful, a burden, but not today." The clarity of her betrayal burned away the fog of self-doubt. "No, Brenda," I said. My voice was stronger than I expected, clear and steady. "We never discussed any investments." I took a step towards her. "I am not confused, and I know exactly what you did." Brenda's eyes flashed with anger. She realized I wasn't backing down. She turned back to Michael, her mask of composure crumbling completely. The victim act started. "He's old, Michael," she cried, tears welling in her eyes. "His memory is failing. You know how he gets." She pointed a shaking finger at me. "He's just being stubborn and ungrateful, as usual. He doesn't understand finance. I was protecting him. I was protecting us. Protecting us from what? Comfort. Security." "Enough," Michael shouted. He slammed his hand on the table. The small birthday cake shook. "Brenda, I want proof," he demanded, his voice cold as steel. "I want to see the statements for this investment account. Now." Brenda flinched, trapped. I don't have them here. They are at the house. In the study." "Then we'll go," Michael said, grabbing his car keys. "Dad, you're coming with me." The power dynamic had shifted. The ground beneath Brenda's designer shoes was starting to crack. The ride to Michael's house was silent. It felt like a journey to another world. We passed through the gates of an exclusive neighborhood. Manicured lawns, houses that looked more like castles. Michael's house was a sprawling modern mansion, all glass and steel. It felt cold, sterile, devoid of the warmth and history of my own home. It was a showroom, not a home. A monument to the life Brenda had crafted. A life built on lies. We walked inside. Polished marble floors, expensive furniture that looked uncomfortable, art that looked like random splashes of paint hung on the walls. Our dinner led us to the study. A large room with a massive oak desk. She pretended to look for the documents, shuffling papers, opening drawers with theatrical frustration. "I can't seem to find the file," she said, her voice trembling slightly. The performance was convincing. Almost. It must have been misplaced. The cleaning lady was here yesterday, blaming the help. Classic Brenda. Michael didn't say anything. He walked over to the desk. He started opening the drawers himself. "What are you doing?" Brenda cried, rushing over to him. "That's my private desk. You have no right to go through my things." "I have every right," Michael said coldly. He pulled out a stack of papers, "especially when my things and my father's things seem to have ended up in your drawers." He started reading them, his eyes scanning the pages rapidly. I watched as Michael's face turned from anger to disbelief, then to a deep, profound sadness. The kind of sadness that breaks a man. "What is it, Michael?" I asked. I already knew the answer. He looked up, his eyes hollow. "Credit card statements. Brenda's personal accounts." He held them out to me. I looked at the numbers, the endless list of transactions. Designer clothes, expensive, jewelry, trips to Paris and Milan, dinners at restaurants that cost more than my monthly pension, tens of thousands of dollars, spent like water. And the dates, they coincided exactly with the dates. Michael had transferred the money for me. The evidence was damning. "Brenda," Michael said. His voice trembled with a mixture of rage and heartbreak. "Explain this." Brenda looked trapped. Her eyes darted around the room. The game was up. Her mask finally shattered, revealing the monstrous greed underneath. "I deserve this," she shrieked. Her voice echoed off the high ceilings. The sound was ugly, desperate. "I deserve to have nice things. Do you have any idea what it's like being married to you, Michael? You work constantly. I am alone all the time." She stepped closer to him, her face twisted in a snarl. "I maintain our status, our image. I host your parties. I entertain your clients. I earned this." "Earned it? By stealing from an old man." "With my money," Michael shouted back. "Money I specifically set aside for my father." "He doesn't need $100,000, Brenda retorted. She turned on me, her face twisted in disgust.
"He's an old man living in a shack."
"What is he going to do with it?" "Waste it." She looked at me with pure contempt. "He's content to wallow in the past." I am not. The words hit me harder than any slap could have. "Waste it. My life, my needs, my comfort. Dismissed as waste." I thought of Margaret, the years we struggled, the sacrifices we made, so Michael could have a better life. We taught him honesty, integrity, the value of hard work. And then a realization hit me, a cold, sickening twist in my gut. This wasn't just about the $100,000 a memory surfaced, sharp and painful. This had been going on for much longer, ever since Margaret died. "Michael," I said, my voice quiet. The memories flooded back with painful clarity. "When your mother, Brenda helped me with finances." Michael nodded slowly, his eyes widened in horror as he understood the implication. "Yes," she said, "she wanted to simplify things for you, to take the burden off you." The burden, there was that word again. "She consolidated my accounts," I continued. "The weight of my own blindness crushed me. My retirement savings, the life insurance money. Everything Margaret and I had saved. I remembered her soothing voice, her promises of security, her crocodile tears at the funeral. She said it would be easier to manage in one place," I whispered. "I signed the papers. I was grieving. I trusted her. I hadn't just been naive. I had been a fool. A grieving, trusting fool. And she had preyed on my grief. Michael, check everything, I said, a desperate urgency in my voice. Check everything since your mother died. Michael looked at me, understanding the magnitude of what I was saying. The betrayal was deeper, darker than we could have imagined. It wasn't a single act of theft. It was a systematic campaign. He turned to Brenda, his face etched with disgust. You didn't just steal the recent money, he said, his voice barely a whisper. You've been stealing from him for years. He stepped closer to her, his voice rising. You've been bleeding him dry while telling him I couldn't afford to help him. Brenda didn't deny it. She didn't even try. She just stood there, her arms crossed, defiance hardening her features. The entitlement was staggering. He had more than enough, she said coldly, and I needed it. I had to maintain our lifestyle. She smiled, a cruel twist of her lips. You should thank me for protecting your inheritance from his foolish spending. Protecting his inheritance? By stealing my life saving, by leaving me to freeze in a crumbling house. Michael was shaking with rage. The veins in his neck were bulging. If this story has your heart racing, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe. Every click helps us keep uncovering stories that deserve to be heard, because what happened next changed everything. We're done here, Michael said. His voice was cold and final. He pulled out his phone and dialed a number. Hello, James? This is Michael Harrison, James Sullivan. Michael's lawyer, a shark. I need you to meet me at the bank tomorrow morning. Mr. Davis is expecting us. Michael continued. It's about my father's accounts and potential fraud. He paused, looking straight at Brenda. Massive fraud. He hung up the phone and looked at Brenda. His eyes were dead. The love he felt for her was gone, extinguished. I want you out of this house, he said, his voice flat. Tonight, James will contact you tomorrow. Brenda laughed. A harsh, broken sound. You can't kick me out. This is my house, too. Her eyes narrowed, full of venom. And if you divorce me, I will take half of everything. Half of the company. Half of your fortune. You will regret this, Michael. We'll see about that, Michael said, grabbing my arm. Come on, Dad. Let's go home. We left her standing in the study, surrounded by her expensive things. The queen of a kingdom built on lies. The silence in the car on the way back to my house was heavier than before. It was the silence of shared trauma, of devastating loss. We were finally home. The old house felt different now. It felt like a sanctuary. That night, Michael stayed with me. We didn't sleep much. We sat in the kitchen, the dripping faucet. The only sound in the quiet house. Drip, drip, drip. We talked for hours about Margaret, about Michael's childhood, about the subtle ways Brenda had isolated him from me, making him believe I was distant and difficult. She had poisoned the well. Slowly, deliberately. I'm so sorry, Dad, Michael whispered. His voice choked with tears. He looked broken, the successful millionaire, reduced to a grieving son. I didn't know, he said, burying his face in his hands. I trusted her. I was so busy, so caught up in my own world. I failed you. I know, son, I said, placing a hand on his shoulder. My own heart was heavy with guilt. I failed myself, too. I let her take control. I let her make me feel small and helpless. I sighed, the weight of the past 3 years pressing down on me. I should have fought back. I should have protected what Margaret and I built. We shared the blame, the guilt, the sorrow. It was a long, dark night, but by the time the first light of dawn crept through the kitchen window, a fragile sense of hope had begun to bloom. We were together. We knew the truth, and we would face whatever came next, side by side. The next morning, we went to the bank. It was a large, imposing building in the city center. The marble floors and high ceilings felt cold and intimidating. We were ushered into a private meeting room. Mr. Davis, the bank manager, was waiting for us, and James Sullivan, Michael's lawyer. Mr. Davis was an older man, kind face, sharp eyes. He had been my bank manager for years before Brenda took over. James was younger, dressed in an impeccable suit, his eyes sharp and focused. Michael, Arthur, Davis greeted us, shaking our hands. James filled me in. I spent most of the night going through the records. He paused, his expression grave. I must say the findings are devastating. He laid out a stack of papers on the table, transaction histories, account summaries, transfers, the evidence of the betrayal laid bare in black and white. James leaned forward. Let's review the evidence, Mr. Davis. Let's start with the recent transfer of $100,000. Mr. Davis said, pointing to a line on the statement. The money was transferred from Michael's account to the joint account managed by Brenda on behalf of Arthur. He traced the line with his finger, and then within 24 hours the entire amount was moved to Brenda's private accounts. He looked up, subsequently used for the purchase of a vehicle and various luxury goods. The red sports car. But that's just the tip of the iceberg, Mr. Davis continued, his voice heavy. The recent theft was a continuation of a pattern of systematic fraud that has been going on for 3 years. He pulled out another stack of papers, thicker than the first. Over the past 3 years, since the consolidation of Arthur's accounts, there had been systematic, large withdrawals. He listed them. Arthur's retirement savings. The proceeds from Margaret's life insurance policy. He stopped, looking at me with pity. They've been almost entirely drained. I felt dizzy. I gripped the edge of the table. The room seemed to spin. Margaret's life insurance. The money she had left to ensure I would be cared for in my old age. Gone. Stolen. How much? Michael asked. His voice was strained, barely a whisper. Mr. Davis sighed, adjusting his glasses. He looked at me, a deep sadness in his eyes, totaling nearly $500,000. $500,000. My life savings. Decades of hard work, of scrimping and saving, of delayed gratification. The security I thought I had. The legacy I wanted to leave for Michael. Vanished. She bled me dry, I whispered. The magnitude of the betrayal washed over me, suffocating me. I felt violated. Not just my finances, my dignity, my trust, my very identity. I'm afraid so, Arthur, Miss Davis said gently. But there was one final twist of the knife. The ultimate betrayal. Mr. Davis cleared his throat, looking deeply troubled. He seemed reluctant to continue, as if he didn't want to inflict any more pain. There is one more thing you need to know, he said. He pulled out a single document from the bottom of the pile. 2 months ago, Brenda attempted to secure a large loan, a home equity line of credit. He paused, looking at me with an expression of profound sorrow. Using your house as collateral, Arthur. I gasped. My house. The house I built with my own hands. The house filled with memories of Margaret, the only thing I had left. The foundation of my life. She tried to steal my home. She forged your signature, Mr. Davis said, sliding the document towards me. I looked at the signature. It was my name, but not my handwriting. A clumsy imitation. A mockery of my identity. A symbol of her contempt for me. We denied the loan, Mr. Davis explained. The signature was flagged as suspicious by our fraud department. It didn't match the one we had on file. He explained the process. When we called the contact number Brenda provided, which was her own cell phone, not yours, she couldn't verify your security questions. James spoke up, his voice cold and precise. This is critical. It shows intent. It proves she wasn't just mismanaging funds. She was actively attempting to steal his assets. Mr. Davis nodded, his voice filled with regret. We prevented the transaction, but we should have alerted you immediately. I apologize deeply for that oversight. We failed you, Arthur. I stared at the forged signature. Tears blurred my vision. I wasn't just a victim of theft. I was a target of calculated destruction. She hadn't just stolen my money. She had tried to steal my history, my very soul. She was willing to leave me homeless, destitute, with nothing. The silence in the room was absolute. The air was thick with grief and rage. Michael looked at the document, his face contorted with a pain so deep it frightened me. He stood up abruptly, his chair scraped against the floor. His eyes were blazing, filled with a righteous urges I had never seen before. Thank you, Mr. Davis. James, Michael said, his voice choked with emotion. We have everything we need. He looked down at the forged signature, his hands trembling. I will be pressing charges. I will ensure she pays for what she did. The fight was on. We walked out of the bank. The bright sunlight felt harsh and cold. We didn't say a word. What was there to say? The betrayal was complete. The devastation was total. When we got back to the car, Michael finally broke down. He leaned against the steering wheel, sobbing uncontrollably, racking sobs of a man whose world had just been utterly destroyed. I wasn't just a victim of theft. I was a target of calculated destruction. She hadn't just stolen my money. She had tried to steal my history, my very soul. She was willing to leave me homeless, destitute, with nothing. The silence in the room was absolute. The air was thick with grief and rage. Michael looked at the document, his face contorted with a pain so deep it frightened me. He stood up abruptly. His chair scraped against the floor. His eyes were blazing, filled with a righteous fury I had never seen before. Thank you, Mr. Davis. James, Michael said, his voice choked with emotion. We have everything we need. He looked down at the forged signature, his hands trembling. I will be pressing charges. I will ensure she pays for what she did. The fight was on. We walked out of the bank. The bright sunlight felt harsh and cold. We didn't say a word. What was there to say? The betrayal was complete. The devastation was total. When we got back to the car, Michael finally broke down. He leaned against the steering wheel, sobbing uncontrollably, racking sobs of a man whose world had just been utterly destroyed. The pain of his betrayal, amplified by the realization of the suffering his blindness had caused me. She didn't just steal the money, Dad, he cried, his voice muffled, raw with agony. She stole your security, your dignity. He looked at me, his eyes red and swollen. She stole the years I thought I was taking care of you. She used my love for you as a weapon against us both. I put my hand on his shoulder. My own tears streamed down my face. I had no words of comfort. The pain was too raw, too immense. We just sat there, father and son, united in our grief and loss. The wreckage of our lives scattered around us. But we were together, and that was a start. The fallout was brutal and swift. James Sullivan worked fast. He filed for emergency divorce proceedings, and he initiated a lawsuit against Brenda, fraud, forgery, elder abuse. He also contacted the police. A woman named Detective Miller took the case. She specialized in financial crimes. She met us at my house, her eyes sharp, taking in the state of the place. Elder financial abuse is more common than you think, Mr. Harrison, she told me, her voice firm but kind. They prey on trust, on grief. But the evidence here is overwhelming. Brenda fought back, dirty. She claimed it was all a misunderstanding, that she was entitled to the money as Michael's wife, that I had given her permission, that I was senile and vindictive. But her lies crumbled under the weight of the truth. The bank records, the forged signature, the testimony of Mr. Davis. Her defense attorney tried to use the prenup, the one she had insisted on before the wedding, to protect her assets. But James was ruthless. He argued that the prenup was voided by her fraudulent activities. You cannot profit from your crimes. The judge agreed. The legal battle took months. It was exhausting, draining, but we stood firm, together. In the end, justice prevailed. Brenda was found guilty. On all charges, she didn't get half of Michael's company. She didn't get the mansion, the luxury cars, the designer clothes. She got a prison sentence. I was there in the courtroom when the verdict was read. I looked at her as the handcuffs were placed on her wrists. She looked small, defeated, the polished elegance replaced by the drab uniformity of a prison jumpsuit. I felt no triumph, no satisfaction, just a profound sadness for the wasted lives, the broken trust, the shattered family. Michael managed to recover some of the stolen money, but most of it was gone, squandered on a lifestyle built on deception. But it didn't matter. The money was never the point. It was the betrayal that had almost destroyed it. Michael took a leave of absence from his company. He sold the mansion, the glass tower, the symbols of a life he no longer wanted. He moved in with me. The old house suddenly felt less empty. The silence was filled with the sounds of conversation, of shared meals, of healing. It was a difficult time. Michael was consumed by guilt and anger. He struggled to forgive himself for his blindness, his complicity in my suffering. We talked a lot during those months about Margaret, about what real love looked like, about the difference between wealth and value, about the things that truly matter in life. Slowly, painfully, we began to heal. The wounds were deep. The scars would remain. But we were healing. The house still needed repairs. We didn't have $500,000 to fix it. But we had something more valuable. We had each other. One crisp autumn afternoon, a few months later, Michael came home with a truckload of lumber. The smell of fresh wood filled the air, the scent of new beginnings. "What's this?" I asked, looking at the sturdy beams and planks. "We have a house to fix, Dad," he said. A small, genuine smile touched his lips. The first time in months, he was wearing jeans and an old flannel shirt. He looked more like the boy I remembered, the boy who used to follow me around the workshop, eager to learn. Not the millionaire CEO. We spent the next few weeks working together, side by side. The sound of hammering and sawing filled the air, echoing the rhythm of my own heart. It was simple work, honest work. His hands were clumsy at first, soft from years of typing on keyboards, but eager to learn. I showed him how to measure, how to cut, how to build something strong and true. We fixed the leaky faucet. Drip, drip, drip. Stop. The silence was beautiful. We rebuilt the porch, tearing down the rotten wood and replacing it with sturdy new boards. We replaced the roof, sealing out the rain and the cold. We painted the walls, covering the stains of the past with fresh coats of color. As we finished the last railing on the porch, we stood back to admire our work. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. It was ours. Michael put his arm around my shoulder. We sat on the new porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and purple. The air was crisp, the silence peaceful. I looked down at my feet. I was wearing the cheap cotton socks Brenda had given me, the symbol of her contempt, the catalyst for the revelation of the truth. But now they were just socks. I built this house on a foundation of love and trust. Michael, I said softly, looking at the sturdy new wood beneath our feet. It cracked. It was almost destroyed, but it didn't break. Michael nodded, his eyes clear and resolute, the pain of the past replaced by a quiet strength. "No, Dad," he said, squeezing my shoulder. "It didn't break, and we're rebuilding it. Stronger than before." I leaned back in my chair. A profound sense of peace settled over me. I had lost my savings, my security, the illusion of a perfect family, but I had gained something priceless. I had my son back, my home back, my dignity back. And as I looked at Michael, his face illuminated by the fading light, I knew that we were richer now than we had ever been, because true wealth isn't measured in dollars and cents. It's measured in the quiet strength of a family bound by honesty, loyalty, and love. And that was something no one could ever steal from us. Thanks for listening. Please rate our story in the comment. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe. Your support means a lot, because your time matters.